So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for Coffee Conversations with Trace Indy. I'm pumped. I've kind of been working on her for a while. We finally, ships collided in the night. We finally got there. Angie Stocklin is joining today. Angie, thanks so much.
Jillian, thanks so much for having me.
I love it. So let me give your bio, and just like everyone else, I write it down because I don't have a memory anymore. So you're a lecturer at Purdue University of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, bossy. A mentor at Butler University, entrepreneur in residence at Marietta College. You are the co-founder and COO of One Click Ventures. You're on multiple boards and advisory boards. You do a lot of stuff. And it's like cool stuff. What I love about it is, all this stuff with up and coming people coming out of college, right? So like our future, how cool is that? So I don't want to lead with Trace and legacy because then we'd be done talking. But I'm excited. So what would you say you do after that laundry list?
Yeah, so I'm kind of calling this my part-time life. After being an entrepreneur for 14 years, I have this big mix of things that I get to do every day. And it feels like a luxury to have time and have choices and get to choose what I do. And so during the spring and the fall and a little bit in the summer, I do teach entrepreneurship at Purdue, which has been really, really cool. But I also am like a mentor for the G-Beta program. I have some angel investments, and I'm just trying to stay a little bit connected with the startup community because I love meeting new entrepreneurs. I love seeing what people are doing. And I'm also doing a lot of like cycling and reading and cooking and just taking some time for myself, which has been really cool as well.
Love that. So let's talk about that, that privilege of being able to kind of figure out that next step and having some joy in the now, right? In this season that you're in. Yes. So you were the co-founder and COO of One Click, and that's how we met. So context to those at home. You and your partner at that time, your co-founder, decided to bootstrap. So you have not been that company, that everyone talks about, because I think that only investment gets press, right? Because it's sexy and like, $1 million or $100 million. Like it is sexy and it is important. Some people need that investment, but you chose to bootstrap your company, which is a privilege to do. But why did you decide to do that and not go the venture route? Because I think that's fascinating. And the reason I say that's fascinating, full circle for everyone listening, where's Jillian going with this, is because now you get to have the season of life. So when your company was purchased, instead of paying back investors and a percentage, you got that money.
Yeah.
Like you got that money. And I think that is something that it doesn't get pressed, but I think that's super cool. So why did you guys decide to do that?
I mean, there's really like a ton of reasons that we ended up bootstrapping. One is like we started the company just seeing if we could do it. Like, let's try to build something and let's build it together. And we kind of took our time for the first few years to figure out how to do it on our own. And so we were teaching ourselves everything, and we weren't really ready for investment at that point in time. And then it got to a point where we were profitable and we didn't need investment. And so we could have taken investment and probably grown faster, but honestly, we enjoyed being in charge and being in control of our own destiny and not having to jump through the hoops of like, once you raise money, you need to keep raising it. And then that's kind of like a full-time job for an entrepreneur and a founder. And so we were always open to the idea of investment, but we were also in e-commerce, like product-based e-commerce, which is not as easy to get investment sometimes as like marketing SaaS in Indianapolis. And so I think that we could have found the right investors, but we really enjoyed building the company on our own. We didn't need the money. And we weren't in the perfect space to like blow up and be like a major D2C company anyway. And so it just felt right for us.
That is really, really cool. So you guys sold the company because time is a construct at this point, and I don't even know what year we're in.
It was July of 2018.
2018. Okay. I was going back further. So 2018, which I just think that is just the coolest thing. So how did you get, how did that journey start for you to where you're like, let's try this thing, right? And then build it. So give us that, Cliff's notes, but how did you get there?
Yeah. So we started in late 2005 with
Okay.
a business called Letters from Santa Claus. And we were literally just the affiliate. So we built the website, we worked on marketing, and then we got $5 for every letter we sold. And that really like sparked our curiosity around entrepreneurship. And it kind of just snowballed from there. So I was a school psychologist. My co-founder was a software engineer. So he at least had like a foot in the door in indie tech and understood technology. I was off in like psychology land, working in schools. So I had no business experience whatsoever. But we found that we worked really well together. We had complementary skills. And I just fell in love with the operation side of the business. I love organization. I love processes. I love procedures. I love figuring stuff out. And as we grew, I also really loved the people aspect of the business. So I loved hiring and leadership and company culture. And Randy loved a lot of those things as well, but he also really enjoyed like marketing and technology. And so we were just a good fit. And so while it was never my dream to be an entrepreneur, I kind of call it my happy accident. And we ended up at a point where we were big enough that somebody else was interested in purchasing us, which is like crazy to think that we built something out of our like spare bedroom. And then this national corporation was like, yeah, we'd like to buy you. I mean, that's just insane.
So cool.
Yeah, it's just absolutely insane.
That is so cool. So it's just so cool.
So I love how you got there from that journey from, again, psychologist. I know schools that could totally use you if you ever decide to go into another season of that. But where did you find, and this doesn't have to be, with previous entrepreneur stuff, right? None of that, but where do you find, and I like to bookend it a bit, but where do you find that struggle, or where did you find struggle, or are you finding struggle, but where are you finding some delight today?
So you want to know struggles and delight?
I want to know all of it.
I mean, honestly, like when we sold, I stayed about 9 months at the company, and then I left. Like corporate life wasn't for me, and it wasn't a great fit. And then I went through a bit of an identity crisis, and by a bit, I mean for like a year and a half. Like it was a struggle to figure out like, who am I if I'm not an entrepreneur? I'm always a co-founder, but I'm not currently an entrepreneur, and I don't have a company, and nobody needs me, and my phone's not blowing up in the morning. And so like it was a journey, like a legit journey for probably a year and a half to figure out like, who am I actually right now? And what do I want to do in the future? And I just broke it down and tried to figure out like, what are the buckets at one click that made me happy? Like, what does that look like? It wasn't necessarily like the heavy responsibility of being in charge of people and their livelihoods, but I loved, again, like the culture and the leadership, processes and procedures. I'm very passionate about like opening up entrepreneurship to more types of people. It doesn't just have to be like white college guys that get to be entrepreneurs. It can be everyone.
Yeah.
And so those struggles led me to where I am now, which is like teaching entrepreneurship and trying to make it accessible and giving like people permission to be entrepreneurs. You don't have to go get a corporate job after college. And even if you do, again, in the future, you could be an entrepreneur. It doesn't have to just be this person that looks like this, right? And so I am getting some delight in that and being able to work with startups and just, I did some volunteer work with Girls Inc. before the pandemic. And so like reaching out to girls at like the junior high and high school level as well, and giving them permission to be something more than just like what's within their immediate circle, what they see every day. And then I also have figured out who I am, just like what I like to do. And I mentioned earlier, like cycling, but just making sure that you take time for yourself. And I didn't do this as an entrepreneur because I loved what I did. And being an entrepreneur was joyous in itself, but I've been able to find joy outside of that as well. And just figuring out like, what do I like to do? And I didn't even know what I like to watch on TV. After we sold the company, I was like, oh, what is this? Like people talk about these shows. I have no idea what they mean. Like I'm so not caught up on movies. And so I had kind of had to like dig in and figure out like, if it's just up to me and it's my choice, like what do I want to do?
Oh my God, I feel like do an entire episode just on refiguring out identity.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like after, like for me, like after, when Henry gets old and leaves the nest, or, when you think you want to be an entrepreneur and then you get a job, you're like, do I still want to do that? Like, who am I? And what are those circles? Oh my God, we're about to have therapy.
I'll call Angie. Like, this is your next
This is my best.
women entrepreneur therapy by Angie Stocklin. I'm in. So I love that so much. And I could literally listen to you talk about that for a very long time. But with that, you know, how would you ask the community to show up? Whether that's, again, like people wanting to do more, finding their identity, or whatever that means to you, you know, what do you need or wish for people?
I think the one thing that I've realized, and this is totally common sense, but sometimes it just takes you a while to get there, right? Is that like when you're growing up, like your circle is kind of your parents' circle and it's very small, right? And so students, young people, people in general only can dream as big as they can see, if that makes sense. So I think one thing that we could do better at as adults is just making sure that we're including all of the young people in our circle and making sure that they're exposed to like bigger dreams and more opportunities and giving them options that they wouldn't necessarily see themselves. And I don't exactly know like the right way to do that. It's probably different for every person and every situation, but it's one thing that I've become really aware of, I think, over the last few years.
So good. That's so good. Because you really don't know who you're opening a door for. Just like you really don't know. And I just love that so much. So, okay. We are tight today. Like this is a nugget of a conversation. I'm here for all of this. So with all those things that you're doing, right? How are you leaving your trace, leaving your legacy?
Yeah. I mean, I still think that's a work in progress. And I think about it a lot, right? Because I am youngish in terms of
you're
like,
young.
People standards.
We're all young,
right? We're early 40s is still young, right?
Totally. I tell myself that every day.
Yes, we'll keep telling ourselves that each other. And so right now it's about like really making sure that people have the support they need, the connections. I know that you are a big connector of people and making sure that if somebody needs to meet somebody else, that they get that accomplished. Giving people access to circles. And so I have a network and not everybody is inside of that network. So giving people access to that network and people within my network when it makes sense is really important to me. Expanding that circle. I think I've realized over the last year or two, like how separated like the universities are from Indianapolis Tech. Like we are such like a lovely close-knit community. But our universities are very spread out. And so trying to connect the students, trying to get like really talented people to stay in Indy and figure out how great it is. I think that could be part of my legacy. And also like what I talked about earlier, which is just making sure people understand, like giving people permission to be what they want to be, whether that's an entrepreneur or something else, and giving them permission to think bigger than maybe what they've thought before. I'd love for that to be part of my legacy as well.
Oh my God, that's a pull quote right there. That's so good. It's so good. Angie, I'm just super grateful for your time. I'm grateful that you have had many a mentor conversation with me over the past few years, and just being a friend. And I'm just really grateful for everything that you're doing in this community, you know, and beyond that. So thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a fun conversation and I love what you're doing with Trace. So keep it up.
Thank you.